Soon and very soon, we
What
are
is
going to
going
see
on?
Tom. Soon and very soon, we might get to see our Tom. Welcome back, everyone, to an almost perfect podcast. I am John. I think I'm still here. I got my same old microphone, same old webcam, even though I have a new webcam next to it, but it keeps turning off on me. Uh, this is the same old podcast we've had for a while. That's the same old Tom who's here with us. Tom, how the hallelujah are you?
I'm doing well, very well. I feel like when you do the intro, it feels like kind of SNL like. It's like we're doing a bit, and then we go, oh,
This is
uh,
actually the real thing. Yeah,
uh,
this is how it goes. Yeah,
or
yeah.
we're people are getting a chance to look at us sitting in the green room talking about what we're going to do.
Sorry, folks. This is as good as it gets. This
Yeah,
is this is it. This is it. So, we've been here, there, everywhere. As far as the podcast goes, we've been hit and miss, and that's because we were taking a principled stance. We were like, if they're not going to pay us more, we're not going to do this. So, no, here we are. It's been a while, like I said, probably last I don't know, 4 months. It's been kind of just everybody's schedules have been different and things.
but it really comes down to when did you and Joseph start back to school?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And
Oh no,
then
that was just a little. No, that is the reason
I
that.
get, I guess if you want to like put blame on something, if you want to
Oh
blame me,
no, I'm just telling everyone this is the truth. Even though John is kind of like, no, that's not the reason. Yes, it
Tom,
is.
remember what they say, when you point one finger at somebody else, you're really pointing three more back at yourself. So,
Yeah, and I always remember where I heard that first. I was in college and at Oral Roberts University, and the guy from New York City was the one who made that comment. That was the first time, like 1980 or no, 1978, 79, somewhere in there.
see, and then you're pointing one finger at the person you're blaming. Three fingers are pointing back at you. And then your thumb is like catching somebody in the crossfire, I guess. They're like, hey, I wasn't even involved in this, and you're thumbing at me. So anyway, yes, Joseph had some other pursuits, ministerial pursuits he was taking care of. I don't know if he's kind of fleshed all that out for everybody yet, so I don't want to be the one to tell everybody what he's doing, working on some good stuff. And so he had told us he wouldn't back away completely, but he needed time, because his schedule is kind of out of whack and it's kind of hard to fit things in. And then, yeah, I did start a new school back in September. Actually, what's today? The 8th. I actually start my second semester on the 12th, so I got to get started again. So that kind of getting used to that, and then of course, once you get into October, November, the rhythm of church changes too. So all that to say, hey, we're here today, okay?
Yeah, and one of the reasons when John asked me to
That's
Tuesday
me, by the way.
morning, yeah, I'm talking to the three people who are watching it. Uh, that anyway, the choice was Tuesday morning, and I had already Ellen and I already had a firm plan that I wasn't about to move, or Thursday afternoon, and I had, as a matter of fact, my wife asked me this morning, so what are you doing today? And I go, I'll tell you when the day's over. I usually don't know specifically. I have full days. I just don't know what they're going to be full of.
Okay, good. So we'll figure it out. We decided that's our mantra for 2026. We'll figure it out. And if I have to get on here and do like solo episodes just to keep us going, maybe I'll do that. I did that one time in the interim. I don't know if you saw that. That was kind of rough for me. I say that, but it lasted like 30 minutes. Just me talking. It's like Me and my big mouth, Tom. Me and my big mouth.
You
So
know, one of the things prevents me from doing it is you're really the technical guy. The only reason we've kept you on all these years is you're the guy who pushes the button.
I am a good button pusher.
Yeah.
Um, so, all right. So here's what we decided to do today. I didn't have any stories prepared because we kind of said let's do it, and I was still doing other things. So,
Yeah.
no funny stories yet.
And one of the things that I think uh, my suggestion is to update people and then kind of talk through what we see the future. And I want to begin with I appreciate the gift that people have given us of actually affirming that they're out there listening.
Yeah.
And
Mom, you're not alone. There's other people listening too.
and it's often surprising who's on there, and it's kind of like Duolingo. Every now and then I see some familiar names and go, oh, and at least one or two of them watch our program, so
Very
that's
good.
cool.
Yeah. See, I would like to, my perfect world would still do it every week, and I would really like to engage some of more of our colleagues and friends
Mm.
like we had before. I think that's pretty good. And so that's what we'll shoot for, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. See, we're already doing
you
this right.
you have the list, but I kind of have the time. So if you give me the list, I may not know the people, but I can say, "Hey, John gave me your name. We've never met before."
And then we'll figure out how to get the bishop here. If we get the bishop, then
That was
we've
that
made
was
it.
exactly who I was thinking
Yeah.
of immediately after I said that. And I had not met the bishop, and
I've met her a couple times. What would you want to ask the bishop, or what would you say we talk about when the bishop comes? See, I'm speaking this into existence, Tom. What do we talk about with the bishop?
well, obviously, the denomination has gone through many changes, and anyone who's in leadership above church, being a pastor in a church, anyone has had, and we have as well. Retire even as a retired person. I've gone through the transition, but you know, just kind of get a clearer view of where we are and where we're going. I have to check the conference pages just to remember the name of our district because it's changed. And
Okay.
honestly, I don't remember the name of the district. Was the Coastal Bend?
We are now the South District.
Okay. Yeah, that
Yes,
makes
South. So
sense.
we'll see, and we'll see how long that lasts. Who knows?
Yeah.
So there it is, Bishop Harvey. There's your prep sheet right there. Tom just gave it
Yeah,
to me.
your invitation
That's it.
and
So Tom had said, "Hey, it'd be a good idea to tell everybody what's going on, why we haven't been here." He even mentioned a couple times in some of our conversations, in church or everything. Maybe do we even decide like we don't do this anymore? I'm having too much fun. Well, I'm going to keep doing this, but it got me thinking, especially today, about ministry and things we do in our churches as ministry, programs, events, things like that. And when you read, I don't know, church growth, best practices, or even just in terms of leadership in ministry settings, and probably beyond ministry as well, one of the things you hear quite often is that you got to know when like to stop doing something in ministry, right? I tease because Brad used to always talk about that quote, if the 1950s ever came back, then most of our churches would be ready because we're kind of doing the same thing we were doing 70 years ago. And so we've got to kind of figure out what that looks like. And part of that is, all right, there are some things that we probably do, some things that we probably spend our time, our resources, money, everything on that maybe we don't really need to be doing anymore. So I thought it'd be helpful then, Tom, if you could enlighten us and let's have a conversation about what it means to both begin and end a ministry. And I think this would be something that's important for a lot of our people that listen, because some of them are clergy themselves, and so maybe they have to make those decisions. But we also have people who are sort of in the pews, so to speak, and these are programs that they're a part of, and maybe they were there at day one, and maybe they have something that they hold on to that's really meaningful at the church. But so this conversation can have some kind of real impact in what somebody does or doesn't do. So let's first talk about like ministry. When somebody gets the idea that they want to do something and they say, for example, they go to you as pastor, Tom, how do you walk through with someone to decide, like, you know what, this is a ministry or this is an event we should do, we should begin doing?
Well, that's a pretty broad. I you know at I would say without question, at some point it has to tie us into our faith and confidence in Jesus Christ. In other words, whatever we're doing will in it will build and strengthen our community of faith, the people that are a part of the Christian fellowship already, the already followers of Jesus Christ. And then the other thing it'll do, the second part of that is, and it gives us an opportunity to connect with other people, um, and try to do it not as church people inviting people to church, but inviting them into a faith journey that at some level is, we're inviting you to know Jesus, not to know Kelsey Memorial, but to know Jesus, or in my past, the churches where I've served. And I'm just trying to think of what I was just. I will put my thought on pause there, but and then there's if we're talking about church ministry, we're always going to be talking about resources, both people and then the resources of the church. For example, we want to start a new Sunday school class, or a new study. Let's say, I hate calling it Sunday school, um, but a new study, and or a new group. And we're gonna have to think of when. We're gonna have to think of if it's gonna be on if it's gonna be on church property, and if it's on church property, how much space does it take up, and is that space available? I mean, just the logistics of actually pulling
Sure.
off something. And my personal thoughts on that is, that when it comes to thinking of new ministry and new outreach, that it almost always is exclusively not on the church property, that it happens somewhere else. What are you actually have to face this throughout the year, because there's opportunities at Kelsey to do new things.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions I would ask, kind of not secondary, but first thing I want to know is, all right, so you have this idea. Like ideas, ideas are great. Um, how does it help us make disciples, right?
Yeah.
How do you envision that as being a part of the way that we connect people, like kind of like you said, Tom, to a faith in Jesus, right? Because if it doesn't do that, then we're probably not the right group to do it. You could probably do that somewhere else if that's not the purpose.
Yeah.
Now, and I think you can probably you can probably sort of spin, maybe, I don't know, anything, and do it in a way that actually helps you make disciples. Then I've heard pastors complain about like quilting groups or even like game nights, things like that. But you can do those things in a way that actually you are connecting with each other, but there is a sense of this is a part of how we're connecting with Christ as well. So, how is whatever you want to do, whatever idea you had that you saw some other church do, or that came to you, or that whatever, how does that directly tie to our mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ? After that, kind of the pastoral side is all right. Like, talk to me. Like, where'd you see this idea, or how did this idea come to you? Like, was this something you've been praying about? And then, how do you envision people participating in whatever this is, right? And then I kind of get to the logistics. All right, who's going to do it with you, right? Where, like you said, where and when, all that stuff. For me, once we say this is how it connects to the mission, um, and there's a thought out like sense of this is how. For me, we'll figure out the other stuff. Like we'll figure out money, we'll figure out rooms, we'll figure out people. But if you're telling me that this is something that you see that can really tie to what we say we really think is the most important thing for us to do, then let's do that and figure it out along the way. So, so I'm
And
kind of easy in some sense. As long as you can tell me how it ties, all right, let's figure it out. I'm with you, right? I'll be your biggest cheerleader. If I can be there, I'll be there. If I need to take part in some way, I'll try to do that. Yeah, but if you say, well, it doesn't really, I want to because I want to, I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe do that at your house and see what happens first, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, and I just think that I think part of that process is, and I was thinking about this. You spoke on, or used the word joy a lot this past Sunday, and 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 I thought about it. And, it is a joy to serve the Lord, and we see in the Psalms a lot of joy. But
Mhm.
there's that other side of, the joy of ministry, the joy of celebrating. We've got a packed room, or whatever. But there's also the other side of that is, and the Psalms are full of lament more than it is celebration, from what I've heard. I just know it. There's a lot of lament in the uh, in the Psalms, and that's a part of the relation, or part of what it is to follow Jesus Christ. And you have to, at some point, deal with and talk about, okay, what are the obstacles that you're going to face, and are you anticipating some problem and some problem areas,
Yeah.
and how are you going to respond to that? And really, when you start a ministry, is kind of like, give us an idea of what it will take to continue, and what will happen, what will it take basic to kill the project. Do you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Ask him. So, what are you going to do when nobody shows up? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so that actually leads to the second part of this then, because where I think probably, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but it feels like my impression is a lot more churches might be dealing with this side of it than they are with that side of starting new stuff that we talked about. But we're dealing with the idea of, we're already doing, this ministry and this effort and this event and this one, and we sort of kind of have our hands stretched all over as a church doing all these things that we've done for a while. And so, how do we decide when it's time to stop doing something, and how do we decide what to stop when we make those decisions?
well, one of the things, certainly as a pastor over the years, uh, and even to the present day, the struggle, especially for smaller churches, and going through that process. And I've presided over the closing of a church up in Wisconsin.
Mm.
Very, very sad, uh, sad moment. And those moments happen. I'm just talking to a pastor who's in Wisconsin, who's Free Methodist, but he's in a small town, and there's a United Methodist Church there, and that United Methodist Church is part of the 3-point charge that is going to be a 1-point charge, and they're having to have the conversation of um, what are we going to do when the 3 congregations become 1 congregation?
Mm.
Um, and, I know there's got to be a healthy way to close out ministry, and then but most ministries that close out, including one of my former churches, once Global Methodist, United Methodist became an issue, they kind of split on then it was about 50-50, yes, no, uh,
That's
and
hard.
yeah, and the fact that they got that point, the unhealthy part of that is basically the church closed its door shortly after that, when that was not their intention, that wasn't their plan. They were going to go forward, but there was so many hard feelings.
Right. How do you go forward from there?
Yeah. If you're United Methodist and you want to be United Methodist, you stay. But now the other half who wanted to go another direction. There's this recognition. Um, I think at some point you have to go. We know that this is going to end. We know this is going to end. We know we know the time is coming close. So let's process this in a way that allows us to grieve the what we're losing, but also to celebrate what we've had. And and like I said, I just know way too many stories of where that process has happened or is happening, but it was not, it just wasn't talked about. Everybody recognized it, but
Yeah.
nobody talked about it.
Yeah, for a group of people who profess a profound faith in resurrection after death, we don't do well with letting things die in ways they should.
Yeah.
Um, I always, maybe hopefully the bishop isn't listening to this one, but I remember when our 2 conferences merged, the Texas conference and the Rio Grande conference. And I remember before that, right before that, I heard a passionate sermon from a pastor who's like, if this is going to live and be this new thing, then the Southwest Texas conference needs to die, and the Rio Grande conference needs to die, and then we came up with this corny name that didn't let them die, and just it's one of those little things that shows me that we're not really good at this sometimes. And then you're talking about like church, churches having to close. But when we get to those points, I think often because kind of like you said, we let things go on a lot longer than we should. And that's kind of the idea that I'm kind of circling around, like how do we sort of get the courage and the faith enough to say, you know what, let's have some real conversations about what's happening here. Maybe it's sort of bigger picture as far as the whole church, but maybe it's a particular ministry, right? What are the first steps into having those real conversations instead of just letting it go almost beyond repair at some point?
Yeah. Well, and I think the why do we do this is probably the first question that we ask. You and I will probably have this kind of conversation centered around an almost perfect podcast. Why do we do this? And like I said, and I don't even earlier, and I think we were recording that when we first talked about this, you know, uh, I don't even remember the other thing but I do remember the one thing is we are going to laugh at least every episode, an opportunity to laugh, and and I think when
And with this crew, I mean,
that was an easy get.
that's easy. It's
That was
plenty to laugh
what they call
at.
it, low flying or low hanging fruit.
Yeah. Yeah, low flying fruit, we're all in trouble. The fruit's flying. We're
Yeah, but we even as we've talked through this today, there's aspects that I'm reminded of what we've done in the past, which isn't necessarily what we'll do in the future, but it's a reminder that one of the really cool things about doing a podcast is we get to talk to some really great people in ministry, and in my mind, there's several people specifically that flash through my memory. Not always recalling names, but I do recall ministries and conversations, and they've been great, which makes me excited about rather than coming to do a eulogy over an almost perfect podcast that it's really an opportunity to to go, okay, yeah, that's one of the reasons we do this is because we get to ask really cool people to be on with us, and it's great when that happens.
I there was an article that came out several years ago. Matter of fact, I think even before I came here to Corpus Christi, and I've used it. Yeah, it did because I used it in Shiner and I used it here as sort of a springboard for some leadership conversations. And I don't remember exactly where the church was, but it was that familiar story of, a church that at one point, they were going to grow and be this whatever big church and whatever. And then the church changes, things around the church change, and you have a congregation that's left that it isn't nearly as big as it used to be, isn't nearly as influential as it thought it might be. And so there's this struggle and things are happening. And the pastor came and was trying to kind of bring new life into it. And one of the things that happened is, they decided to, quit certain ministries, which is kind of what we're talking about. And I remember there's a part of the article where the pastor talks about in a worship service on a Sunday morning, I think it was like it might have been like a clothes or a food pantry kind of thing, something that had been going on for like 50 years. And it had kind of dwindled to a point where there was really one, maybe two volunteers who were in their 90s working this. And, it just really wasn't sort of doing anything for other reasons too. And so they decided to make the hard decision to let that ministry go. And part of that was in worship. If you've ever been a part of whatever the ministry was, if you ever brought clothes or food, if you ever volunteered, if you ever bought something, if you ever, whatever, if you ever prayed for it, would you please stand? And as they acknowledged that, the pastor repeated those words a lot of us know, well done, good and faithful servant, speaking to the ministry and not just to the people. And every time
Yeah,
I read that, it kind of choked me up. I'm like, wow, because what happens is we put as people, we put a lot of time and effort, energy, maybe a lot of enthusiasm into these ministries, and they go on for a long time because we feel like, well, I've put a lot of time and energy and enthusiasm, and whether they're quote unquote working or not doesn't really matter. It's kind of what we do. And I think that's where we're kind of, the way things are for most churches today, we got to kind of be able to look past that to see, well, maybe there are seasons for everything. On our New Year's Eve uh, worship service, we focused on Ecclesiastes 3, right? That great passage. There's a time for everything.
yeah,
And, in ministry, there's a time to start a ministry and there's a time to end a ministry. And so being able to say, I know we've done this forever. I know it did a lot of good at one point, and I know it's something that I'm attached to and something that I hold dearly. And so and so used to be a part of this, and but maybe for the greater good of the church's ministry in God's kingdom, maybe it's time to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. We have to do something else now." And that can be hard to do because that is, not to sound exaggerative, but that is a loss. That's a death, right? And so
Yeah.
that's hard.
Well, and in thinking about this, I mean, certainly have to, well, does the Bible have anything to say about that? Does Jesus have anything to say about that? And two things come specifically to mind. And in fact, right now I'm in that, in my gospel reading, I'm in the section, I am the bread of life, and where Jesus has fed, miraculously fed 5,000 men plus women and children. And in the aftermath, people are chasing him down, and he's now saying, well, basically you're just coming here because we've got a good food pantry. And well, I want you to know I am the bread of life. And then he, as in that conversation, he's really beginning to take the pruning shears and lopping off ministry.
Mhm.
And he does it in a big way when he says, "Unless you eat my body and drink my blood." And people started to leave, and a lot of people started to leave. And
Right.
when he turns to Peter, he says, "Are and the disciples, are you going to leave?" And Jesus said, where will we go? Where
Be there,
can
yeah.
we go? You have the words of life." And that was a pruning process that Jesus was doing, because he knew that it wasn't to draw crowds; it was to put the spirit of God in a people who would be, who would produce fruit in multiple ways. And then in as he's in the upper room, and the last night, and has done, he's washed the disciples' feet, he's broken bread, he's lifted up the cup, and he's having this conversation about uh, abiding in him, and my father prunes things, and we and he's using things that we see over and over again in real life. Especially if anyone's ever grown tomatoes, about the pruning process. Or I've never grown grapes, but I remember reading a book about, I forget the name of it, and it was a really good book. And the author talks about moving into a house, moving into a home, and there's a fence, and on the fence is this beautiful grapevine, and his neighbor, um, you know, basically asks him, "Do you want a lovely looking plant, or do you want to grow the best grapes you've ever had?" And he's kind of like, "Oh, I want the grapes." So they hack it away, and he says it looked awful, but those were the best grapes. And
Yeah.
so we see over and over again this there there are things that just suck the energy out of a church and the resources out of the church, and those things need to be like suckers on a tomato plant. They need to be cut off.
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of wrap up where we are. A good way to think about that. That is biblical language for what we're talking about. And so, but we prune because growth comes from that. And that's the point, right?
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
us learning how to experience loss, but not as complete loss, but okay, this is what we are pruning, this is what we are letting go, with the hope and with the trust that God still brings something out of that. That's sort of resurrection hope. That's like resurrection for our life, yes, of course, but even in our ministry together. I read somewhere one time about a practical thing. Somebody said, you know, when you have your ministries, stop calling them by their years. You know, this is the third annual, this is the fourth annual, so on and so forth. Because then what that does is sort of ingrain in people, you know, once you get to sort of number 23, oh, we could never stop this. It's number 27. How can we stop, you know, after 20, right? And just call it what it is, so that as a way of being better prepared, that if when time comes to let go, we can do that more faithfully, so that God can do the growth that whatever, you know, needs to happen afterward. So yeah, that's a good way to finish that. So all right, Tom, considering all that, then I'll give you a final word about what all this means for our churches today.
Well, the only thing I would say is thank you for texting me and say Tuesday morning or Thursday afternoon work for you, and actually prompting us to get back on online, and and again, for those who are hopefully happily surprised, joyfully surprised. Oh, they're on again.
They're
Thank,
podcasting with the fishes.
thank you for being on this journey with us all these years and all these episodes.
Definitely, definitely. And not just because it's our baby, but I don't think we're going to stop this anytime soon, because I feel like there's still some fruit there that's there for the taking. And so, yeah.
If nothing else, there's at least a couple of fruit cakes.
Who are you talking about? You know, I mean, fruitcakes. Okay, with that, we will finish this week. Like Tom said, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Let's talk about ministries that you're having a hard time letting go, or how you've experienced the loss in ministry, and maybe what came out of that as a result. And so, kind of talk about how we can walk through this time together to figure out, you know, how we can make room for what God may want to be doing in our through our ministries next. So, let's hear from you. We're on Facebook still. We have a YouTube channel. We have a website. I need to put it out there, but I forget what to call it. So I'll work on that.
Hey, and if you at home are kind of going, how did I get here?
You know how
Welcome
you
to.
found this video? Just find it again.
I was gonna say it took me like 3 or 4 years before I knew it was not just a perfect, no, almost perfect. It was an almost perfect podcast.
And almost perfect podcast. Yes.
I
so,
could never find it on YouTube.
so all that means is you may or may not see us next week. As the saying goes, we'll see what happens.
But
Have a
we will try to make it more than once every 4 or 5 months.
That's right. We will try. We will try our best. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of the week, and God be with you. That'll be our mantra. We'll see what happens.